G'day, everyone. Welcome to another Toon podcast, the Southern Hemisphere's biggest and best podcast for all things Newcastle United. Big show tonight. We've got a little bit of news that's been kicking around, and we've sort of been putting this off and just touching the surface on it, but we're finally going to rip the Band-Aid off and go for a big deep dive into Allan Saint Maximin. What's his status, and does he have a future at Newcastle United? Before we go any further and introduce the boys, just a shout out for everyone. If you're watching, give us a like. I reckon we're going to probably generate a fair few comments with this. It's a very topical thing. It's probably the most topical thing and divisive thing I can remember for Newcastle United for a long, long time. So we'd love to hear your thoughts about it all, where you sit, whose side of the fence you sit on. So, give us a comment, like, subscribe to the video as well. We're pumping along at the moment, chugging along. So tell your friends, get everyone on board and jump on. So without further ado, tonight joined by Lee in the self-proclaimed sporting capital of Australia, Brisbane. How are you, Lee?
Wasn't self-proclaimed at all. It was by some Swiss place who decided Brisbane was the capital of the sports in Australia. Melbourne didn't even make the top 20, man. That's how far away you lot are. I'm all right, mate. Thanks. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm good. Craig and your bung eye, how are you, mate?
I'm all right with my 1.5 eyes. I apologize if anybody's watching this on a big screen TV. You might want to put a little block in front of where I am. I've got a hideous eye infection, but I'm here in spirit and in person. So, looking forward to doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those watching at home, Craig hasn't been on the Gatorade saxophone the last 2 hours before he's jumped on and done this video. It is a genuine eye infection, so just bear with him. Don't look at him. Definitely don't look him into the eye. That's for sure.
You might want to listen to this one rather than watch.
Yeah. It's not too late to jump onto Spotify or Apple Podcast to get the rest of this podcast in. We'll start off with Harvey Barnes. Craig, Scott Wilson from the Northern Echo put out a story last night, our time, saying that Newcastle are very confident the deal would be completed by the end of the week. A fee reported to be about 35 million with 5 million in add-ons. And then another report come out later in the night or during the day from Craig Hope saying the deal's live but not close. Someone's going to be right. Who's going to be right here?
I'm hoping it's the first one. I really do. Purely on the fact that he's a player, I think that excites all of us as fans, Harvey Barnes. And we want to get players in sooner rather than later so they can get a full pre-season or as close to a full pre-season under the belt. Maybe make the game at, is it Rangers at the weekend?
I think Gateshead's this weekend.
Gateshead this weekend and then Rangers next week.
The Rangers might be the one after, yeah.
Yeah, if he can make a Rangers game and then head off to the tour of the States, that would be a good place to get everybody in,
Yeah, I'm not that bothered about the Rangers game, but I think the America trip's key. You've got to try and get as many people and sort of bring them into the culture, and sort of that first trip away is a really good time to sort of bond with your new teammates and stuff like that. So, yeah, hopefully it's going to happen. I think it'd be a great signing for the club. I don't think the fee's too ridiculous, all things considered, with his form, especially over the last sort of 2 seasons at Leicester. So hopefully they can come to some kind of arrangement reasonably quickly. And I think Leicester would probably want to get the money into so they can start reinvesting and plotting their way back to the Premier League. Lee, I know you're a big Harvey Barnes fan.
Yep.
Are you excited for him to come in, or you're not bothered? What's your sort of state of things?
No, I'm very excited, mate. We got a whisper that Maddison wasn't the primary target, and this was a few weeks ago now. I was quite keen to get Maddison in, I'm not going to lie, but I was also very keen on the idea of bringing in Harvey Barnes, because you just have to look at even last season, man. 13 goals from the wing. All right, you only got 1 assist, but if he's banging in double figures from the wing, you have to be kind of impressed with that goal contribution. And if you compare him to the main guy that we always want to see down the left, who we're going to talk about soon, as you've mentioned, ASM, there really isn't any comparison as far as goal contributions are concerned. Last season ASM got 1. 1 goal, 5 assists. Right, got more assists, 1 goal against Wolves, but just doesn't compare. And if you can get someone in like Harvey Barnes who's reliable, who's going to be there game in, game out. I think he did something like 34 games last season. ASM
I think
did 13.
Yeah, 13.
So you've already got that reliability factor coming in. You've got the goals coming in. He's about the same age. He's on about the same wages, although it depends on where you look. I've seen things ranging from 40 grand to 100 grand on both of these guys. So God knows what they're actually on. But it looks to me like there's an obvious improvement. Okay, he doesn't have the flair of ASM, and we're going to talk about this a lot more, I know. But he has the goals, and over the last 4 seasons, he's been right at the top of the league as far as contributions are concerned across Europe, really. So I'm very excited. If we can get him in, I think that'll be an absolutely brilliant bit of business. It might mean the end of ASM, but it also might mean that we've got ASM and Barnes as options down the left. And maybe the likes of Big Joe will be more central. But no, I'm very excited. I hope we can get him in after all this talk. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be a great signing, and whether it's a replacement for Maxi or it's a direct competition, I think we win either way with that. So, moving on to a story. It might have been Jordan Cronin tweeted it that some fans have been doing the tour. I'm sure most of us overseas who have been over to Newcastle have done the stadium tour once or twice. But they'd ripped out a whole heap of seats in the Leazes, and the tour guide had actually mentioned to him that they're actually replacing them seats with a big Nufc in seats, which kind of sounds not exciting, but I think it's really exciting. Like, I don't know why I'm excited for seats, Craig, but I think it's great.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's these little things that the owners are getting right, which make a big difference. Anything from cleaning the windows to getting anything like that.
Just showing care.
You know when they show the stadium empty on Sky Sports, whatever, or like the build up of the game, anything like that, that's just going to get the name out there that little bit more, is all that little bit better. But I just wish they would just do the old black and white seating arrangement like they did before they had the stadium expansion in like the mid-90s. I thought the black and white seats, especially on the likes of the East Stand, just looked incredible. But it'd be interesting to see how this looks. They're going to have it in 4 different blocks, obviously, with the 4 different letters. So it'd be interesting to see how it works out. If they're going to do black and white letters, that would make sense. But I'm intrigued to see how it looks.
Yeah, the Leazes is undergoing some kind of mini renovation as well. I've been reading and hearing about things with the corporate hospitality area as well. It's been getting full revamped. I think some people have actually lost their seats who've been in and around that area as well due to it. But I think that's all part of the commercial growth and getting more high rollers in that are going to pump some more money into the club and stuff like that. But were you a bit of a seat nuffy like me and Craig and excited to see new coloured seats and spelling a word or something like that?
Yeah, forget Harvey Barnes. Give us some coloured seats. That's what I'm on about. Give us some coloured seats. I'll be honest, you see a lot of stadia around Europe in particular and South America and all that, and they've always got, names and stuff spelled out. Sometimes they've got the Nike tick and that kind of stuff on it as well. For a very long time, I've wondered why we didn't have, and I was kind of thinking, would you put it on the East Stand? But you can't really because it's too small. It never occurred to me just to put the letters NUFC onto the Leazes. I assume they'll do level 2 to level 4, so that gives them a fair bit of height, and they'll have to probably use 1.5 blocks or sections, I imagine, to try and fit it all in. It's interesting what you say about the corporates, because I used to sit in level 4 in the Leazes corner, and I was only a few seats behind where the boxes were. So I wonder if my seat might have been cold, as you say, with the whatever they're doing there. I haven't seen anything about that, but it's interesting. But I think, like Craig says, it's the details. It's the little things that they're doing, like giving the bloody walls a wash, like getting rid of the dead pigeon, cleaning the windows, It's not rocket science. It's just the useless sod who was here beforehand didn't give a flying monkeys about it. And the players started to look decrepit. And everyone who's went that ground could see areas where it just looked rank. And so, they've given it a wash. They're starting to put some nice little details around the stadium to give it a bit of personality, perhaps. Who knows? They might even change the slanty text on the East Stand. They'll put that back to the normal non-Sports Direct font.
non-italic.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, also there's other plans for that East Stand, isn't there? From what we hear, so the whole thing might be good anyway. But no, I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of anything that gives us a little bit of je ne sais quoi to the ground. It's already a lovely ground. It could be better in certain areas, and I think just stuff like that. It's nice. There's nothing to complain about, really. At the end of the day, it's just a nice little touch.
Can you just translate that for us?
What? Je ne sais quoi?
Yeah, what's that?
It's a song by Kylie Minogue, was it? Or was it something? Who sang that? I don't know.
You're thinking spinning around. Anyway, the last sort of thing, I'm sure most people on our social media have seen, I think at the start of the week, that the safe standing seems to be finished in the Gallowgate corner, which is another easy win, really, isn't it? It's a great initiative, Craig. I think a lot of stadiums were a bit hesitant, I guess, after what had happened in the past. But moving now, I mean, there's so many ways you can do it and facilitate it and make it safe. I think it's going to add a really, like, the atmosphere is already great, but it's going to be a really, really big and positive thing and increase the atmosphere, I think, at home games.
To be honest, not many people sit in the stadiums anyway. No. Most of them stand the majority of the time anyway.
Not in that corner.
Especially there, the strawberry corner, you know?
Yeah.
And the fact they've done it up in the away section as well, I think that's pretty good. To be honest, you won't want to be standing up too long at that place because you're getting a nosebleed anyway when you're up that high. But the last thing you want to do is falling forward when you're on level 7 because you're just going to end up down in the Leazes paddock at that rate. But I'm all for it. Bring it on. Do more. See how it goes. A few of the people who've had their seats replaced because they didn't want safe standing, they've been relocated successfully, apparently, from everything I've been reading. So they're happy with the seats that have been given as like an exchange type thing. So far, so good, and not really had any complaints from anybody on social media.
Yeah, I think you get the odd person who's probably cracked the shits about it, but I think you're going to do that and get that wherever and whatever you do. You're not going to please everyone. There's going to be people who crack it anyway. So yeah, that's another easy win, small win and stuff like that. I'm actually excited to see with Stella, the sponsor, and their I guess sort of track record of providing for events and catering for events, if they really look to enhance the match day experience outside of the ground and stuff like that. I wonder if that's going to be a thing this year and more sort of activities and shit like that, maybe for the kids to participate in, when, like, just to make them put themselves out there and promote themselves and stuff like that. So that might be something to watch, I think.
There has been suggestions that the Metro car park that we now have back under control of Newcastle will be turned into some kind of fan zone. Now, I don't know if that's going to be for this season or next season or whatever. And obviously we don't live there, so we don't get to see if anything's happening on the ground. But that was one suggestion that could bring in the kids, could bring in the families, just make more of a day out of it than getting shit in the pub and then going to the match and getting out the match.
You've got to learn sometimes, mate.
So, it sounds like a good idea as well. Until they decide what they're going to do with it long term, that could be a nice, and it's a fairly decent size as well. There used to be
it is a good size, yeah.
Yeah, so it would be it'd be interesting to see what they do with that. And also for the safe standing, it's probably a good thing that people who didn't want to be there have moved out, because presumably that means people who do want to be there will be moved in alongside everyone who's already decided to stay there.
So to be more, yeah.
The atmosphere should be a little bit more, even more again, jumping. And it's always a good atmosphere in the corner anyway. I don't think it's going to do anything to the capacity of the stadium, because the seats are still there.
The seats are still there, aren't they? Yeah.
So it's got to be a 1-for-1 apparently.
You can just stand up and move forward a little bit, So I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Is it a trial, or are they actually? Is this it? Like, is it done, or is this like a trial for this season to see how it goes, or what?
It's a trial to see how it goes in terms of how it works, whether it's a fan favorite type thing, and if it is, they'll roll it out in more parts of the stadium. Whether they'll turn the majority of the Gallowgate into safe standing for the future, who knows? But it's a trial to see how it goes, and then they'll expand it if requested.
That'll be interesting to see how that turns out then. I'm looking forward to see how it goes, and it's nice to see it back. As you touched on, Keegs, there was a good reason why they didn't have that for a long time, and It'll be interesting to see how the jobs with the blokes in the fluoro who always try and keep people seated. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the mighty power stick being taken away from them, and how they react. So that'll be funny to see how they get on.
Yeah. So that's just a couple of things been kicking around, but we've held off for long enough. Let's take the deep dive. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Like I said at the start, off the top, he's probably the most polarizing and debated player I can think of in living memory, probably. I mean, probably the other one who comes close was Ben Arthur, but I don't think he's had it. He's definitely been argued over, but I don't think he's been anywhere near argued over as much as ASM has over probably the last 12 months, maybe, but maybe ever since Eddie Howe took over, there started was rumbling saying he wasn't going to be an Eddie Howe player and this and that. But yeah, given his last 12 months and stuff like that, and our sort of financial predicament, that conversation's really starting to simmer and really come to the boil now. So what we're going to do is we've made a few points, some pros and cons. So these aren't how would I say? They're not opinions or anything like that. These are just the facts that we know and what's been stated publicly and stuff like that, what we've seen with our own eyes. So it's not a hyperbole. We're not trying to manipulate an argument one way or the other. These are purely things that have been seen or been said on the record. So the best thing with debates is to put all the facts out there and let people make up their own minds and stuff like that. So as you alluded to earlier, Lee, over the last sort of season, he'd made 25 appearances for the club, which is probably a little bit more than I thought he did, actually. Craig, you mentioned he'd had 4 different injury layoffs over the course of the season as well, which probably didn't help. 25 appearances, 13 appearances as a substitute, and he finished 6 games. So he played 90 minutes 6 times over the course of the season. So, and like you said, Lee, he'd had one goal against Wolves, which was a great finish, to be honest. And 5 assists for the season as well. So that's where we are. So we'll start with the pros, I think. So dribbling obviously is probably his biggest asset, that and his pace. Craig, fair?
Yeah, definitely. I think every time he's ranked one the top 5 take-ons in European football, not just in the Premier League. So he's obviously got that ability to beat a man, whether it be pace, dribbling, turn, acceleration, whatever. Definitely excites everybody in that department, that's for sure.
Yep. What else? I've got he's a fan favourite. Lee, would you say that? I think most fans seem to love him who are at the ground, and he seems really well liked by the players as well. I haven't heard. I heard second. You always hear rumours about discontent and they're not happy, but from what we've heard with the players and from the coaches as well, they all love him too.
Yeah, fan favorite. I guess that's subjective. I don't think he's hated necessarily, but my opinion would be that he's by and large liked by the fan base. His teammates probably like him, but who knows if he's around enough to for them to even remember who he is. From one injury layoff to the next.
We'll get that. We'll get to that in the cons. In the cons column.
But I think he certainly. I seem to remember him being pretty good with the fans when he first arrived. He had some nice words to say about the fans when he signed his new contract in 2020. I think he's been spotted, hasn't he, handing out watches to people outside of the Milburn exit and this kind of thing. And that's a little bit interesting. In that, is that for the publicity? Is he doing it for the sake? Is it his money? Has he been sponsored? Where's he getting these watches from? What's the deal with that? It's a bit of a weird one, that one. But I think on the whole, I think it's fair to say he is well liked. It's the other things that will get you that stretch it.
So he loves the club, Craig. I think that's fairly obvious with his social media and his engagement and everything like that. He always says the right things on social media, and he seems to genuinely love the club.
Yeah, definitely. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and that's good. He's got passion. He loves this club as much as the next player, I would probably say. There's no denying that. But there's only so much that love and passion of the club will get you if you don't turn those performances on the pitch.
I would also say, as far as his social posts, he drives Mark up the wall with his.
That's a pro. That's a pro.
With his 4D chess comments that don't really go anywhere and don't tell you anything.
So another pro, or another positive I've got is when he plays, we seem to have a good balance on both wings and a good threat from both wings. Like there was a time, definitely during the last season, where nearly all of our play was going down the right-hand side, and teams really started to overload on that side because there was no threat coming from the left. So they could sort of just we're a bit predictable with what we were going to do. So when he does play, he does offer that sort of threat on the left-hand side too, and sort of makes it hard for teams to maybe read what we're doing and stuff like that. So I think that's definitely a positive, Lee.
Yeah. Although I will say as well, though, that the more games that he plays down the left, the better teams handle what he's going to do. The more they are expecting him to cut inside, because he's always going to cut inside, and they know that he's going to try and take them on, so they can somewhat predict that a little bit as well. And I've seen a lot of times when he's going to do something, he just quite easily loses the ball, and that's just because they know what he's going to do. So there's two sides to that, But obviously, from a balance perspective, we were right side heavy for far too much of that season last season.
Yeah,
and Harvey Barnes, of course, would help fix that.
Yes, so that sort of brings me to my last pro I had listed on my list anyway, was for him to leave. That would hurt our depth. We don't know what's happening with Harvey Barnes at this point in time, so we can't say, well, we're not going to lose our depth because we'll have one out, one in. At the moment, we don't have Harvey Barnes. So if he leaves and Harvey Barnes doesn't come in, then that definitely hurts our depth on that left-hand side. Craig?
It would do if he played.
Well, no,
yeah.
I'll answer that question by asking a question as well. If he's fully fit and say the whole entire squad is, does he start on the left-hand side, or would you put Joe Linton or Joe Willock there? Because if it's just affecting the squad, it's not a major thing. But if it's affecting the starting 11, then it definitely is. Where would you, if he's fully fit and so is Joe Linton and Joe Willock, who do you start there?
I mean, I would.
You go, Lee.
All right.
No, you go.
We've seen too many times that ASM works better as an impact sub. When the legs are getting tired and minds are getting weary, you get someone like him who can dance around people, and you profit from it. That tends to be the best time to bring him on, in my opinion, the way things are right now. And he doesn't track back an awful lot either, so you lose a certain amount of protection for the back when he's up the wing, losing the ball, and then kind of trotting back, which he does far too often for my liking as well. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Craig, I think it would be horses for courses. So depending on who the opposition was, I think that's who that, like in a perfect scenario where we've got 25 fit players and we can pick anyone we like, I think he'd pick the team depending on our opposition. Like, so you can and I think that's my mind goes back to that Manchester City game at the start of the season where he was unplayable, absolutely unplayable. And he had the freedom because Man City was they were like two boxers just trying to punch each other and knock each other out. It was just back and forth. It was honestly one of the best games of Premier League I've ever seen, just because it was just two teams dead set having a crack at each other for 90 minutes. It was great. But he was afforded that space because everything was open, and that's when he looked his best. You know what I mean? Whereas when he plays against teams who are going to come and give us the dreaded low block, I don't know if he's as effective because he doesn't have that space to sort of go into. So to answer your question, I think for me it would depend on who we played as to whether he played or not. So we'll move on to the sort of cons or the reasons why he should leave, I guess. The first one I had was his sort of inconsistency. I think, but I think all these, definitely my first 4 points are all sort of intertwined together. So I had inconsistency, injury prone, his fitness, and his work rate. Now I think you can sort of link all them together as a cause for, like, they all sort of have a knock-on effect on the next thing. So yeah, I think he's inconsistent because of he's not fit enough, and then he's not fit enough because he's injury prone, and because he's not fit enough, his work rate's not where it is for where everyone else is. Is that probably fair, Lee?
I think you're probably right in large parts there. I'm also not sure if he really suits Eddie Howe's high pressing system either.
That's the other argument. Is he breaking down because his body he can't do what the team needs him to do?
That's precisely what I was going to get at. So is the reason why he's breaking down just because he is a good player, but the wrong player in the new system, if you like, that we have now since Cabbage buggered off and Eddie Howe came in. But yes, he is far too unreliable because he's breaking down. And when he comes back, you have to get back up to match speed. And then that's a time when you can get injuries quite easily because your body's not quite up to it. And then you're letting down the team a little bit because you're not performing at your best. And then you get an injury and it's all the way back to square one. And you just give us the same problems over and over again. So, yeah, I mean, I think if it's partly that, but also I do wonder if he's right for this team just because of the way we play.
Yeah. Craig, where do you sort of land on all that?
Just pretty much echo what Lee said, to be honest. I do think the inconsistency of being out of the team due to injury doesn't help. Doesn't allow you to get back to match fitness. Doesn't allow you to build up confidence or anything like that at all. And then when he does have a good game, he's back out for another 2 or 3. You know, there's just not enough there to suggest that Eddie wants him around. And then not coming from any inside knowledge or anything, because none of them got that. But just from my opinion, I don't think Eddie can trust him as a player over the course of the season anymore.
Yeah,
you can't.
You can't rely on it. Yeah, actually, you can't rely on him at all. But yeah, when you say trust, that my mind sort of harks back to that. Remember that Forest game where they were going to hock him before half time?
Yeah.
And they actually moved him in to the middle and pulled, it might have been Isak out on the left for the last sort of 10 minutes. And I don't know if you remember, you definitely remember, Craig. I don't know if you remember it, Lee. Graham Jones him and Eddie it looked like they were getting in an argument just before half time. And I think Craig was saying, like, get him off. And then they ended up hooking him at half time and Anderson come on in the second half. And we all know what happened after half time at Forest. But yeah, that sort of, yeah, can he be trusted to fulfill his role even when he did get a start? So the other things I've got as a sort of negative, I guess, is, well, not a negative for him anyway. I think when he goes home when he's injured, I think that would rub people up the wrong way. I know I said at the start we're not sort of going to make dispersions and stuff, but I think a lot of us and probably a lot of people who are watching and listening have been involved in sport in some capacity, and to see a teammate what looks like on the surface not buying in, like, he can stay. He's got, like, we've all seen the new training ground upgrades and stuff like that. Like, the money they've spent and the medical facilities and the medical professionals that they've actually brought into the club in the last 18 months has been well overdue. And some of the stuff we've got now is state of the art in terms of medical science and stuff like that. Why he can't stay in the country and at the club and get his treatment, I don't know, but I reckon that would sort of piss a few people off, Lee.
Maybe. For all we know, he's done that in the past with his previous injuries and then hit upon a formula that worked best for him by going abroad to do it his way. I mean, he knows his body better than anyone. And also you got to remember, it's also a mental battle as much as it is a physical battle to get back into shape. I don't blame him for wanting to go into somewhere that he knows, perhaps in France, or even just somewhere that's warmer than the Northeast. I mean, pick a place that's pretty much all warmer than the Northeast.
You could go anywhere.
Yeah, so I think it's probably a little bit too harsh to knock him down for this, although it's what he does on top of his supposed training when he's away that is, I think, a distraction that he could do without. If you know what I mean. I don't know if it's on your list, but I'm talking about Helios here.
No, Helios wasn't on my list at all. I don't think that's a pro for him staying or a reason for him to leave. I think that's his own personal stuff.
I mean, I don't mind players having hobbies. Don't get me wrong, but if he's injured and his mind appears to be more interested in playing cards and chucking fat wads of cash around a round table, and you see him leaning across these giant tables, and I'm thinking, oh mate, don't put your hammy, for God's sake. You're supposed to be taking it easy. It's supposed to be focused on recovery, not like nicking this kid's money with some weird card game. So I do sometimes wonder where his focus is, and I wonder if his focus does drift in those situations.
Yeah. All right. So the last two things I've got, Craig, that are sort of negatives and reasons to sell him is he's the only valuable asset we've got. So we are told time and time again. Yeah. So with FFP and things like that, the reality is we don't have much to sell. Like we read the story this morning that Man City sold some kid from the academy for, was it 15 million to Southampton? Like, like I've never heard of him, and they've sold some kid for more than, well, the same as Chris Wood. So, like, yeah, it's frightening how far we are behind in terms of that stuff. So, really, he is the most valuable asset we've got to flog off, and it could really help with FFP. And for those who aren't totally across it, basically, in a nutshell, is when you bring a player in, you can stretch their contract over 5 years for FFP. When you sell a player, that amount comes in full straight away. So if we brought someone for 30 million, that 30 million is stretched over 5 years. If we sold ASM for 30 million, that 30 million is banked straight in there this year in this year's account. So that's why he's probably the most valuable asset. And I think the reality is he's probably triple the value of what anyone else we're probably going to get rid of. He's probably triple the value of all them. So that sort of counts against him if we need a sacrificial lamb to balance the books. He's probably going to be it. And then that ties into my last one, Craig, when we've won and we've played really well without him in the team. So he's not I wouldn't say he's a key part of our team, and we need him to win like we had maybe in his first couple of years with the Cab.
Yeah, he is a luxury player, and I know a few of them mentioned that. But he's certainly not a key integral part of this team. He absolutely not. The moments of brilliance, like against Man City, they're too far and in between. And I do think he will go in the summer. I think he'll drag on right till the end of the summer, unfortunately. So we'll have to wait to get the funds from him. But in terms of his place in the squad, where I see him sitting is just on the bench. I can't see him doing anything more than that. I do think he will go for plus 35 million. I hope he does anyway, at least. Where his mentality lies in the club, I don't know. Does he want to be here? Does he not want to be here? He's no longer the centre of attention, that's for sure. And I think that's one thing that's maybe got to him as well, as he was Mr. Newcastle at one point because he was our only hope and glory during those dark days. But now we've got so many better players, consistently better players on him. Maybe he's just thinking, you know what, maybe it is time for me to move on, where I can be a bit more in the limelight. If you went Everton, I mean, who they got compared to him? No one. So he'd be treated like pretty much a god over there. But we've got players now which are surpassed him in just a matter of a few months. If you look like Isak, Bruno, Big Joe, they're all far better consistent players than what he's ever been for us.
Mm. Yeah, so that's what I had. I'm not sure if you guys had anything else for either pros or cons and stuff like that, but that was sort of how I listed it. But I've got 5 questions to finish off this pod, and I think they're probably really important questions that could sort of determine one way or the other what his future might be. The first one, I'll come to you, Lee, is and Craig spoke about that earlier. He has, when he signed, he was the top dog. He was the man. It looked like everything was just give it to him and he'll do something. Now he's not. So now he's a squad player. Do you think he'll accept being a squad player, or do you think he likes to be the main dog like he was under Cabbage Head?
Well, I suppose he's gone from a big fish in a little pond to a little fish in a big pond, hasn't he? I don't know. I mean, I don't know him well enough to know where his head is. Say well enough, I don't know him at all. To know where his head is with regards to the fame and the fortune and the limelight and how that affects his psychology, I couldn't honestly say. But like most players who think they are pretty good. And do I remember rightly? He once said he wanted to win the Balloon d'Or. Didn't he say that once?
Yeah.
So he obviously has a high opinion of himself. Players like that, because you're taught to always have the confidence in yourself. You're taught, it's drummed into you from the very early age. Have confidence in yourself. Have confidence. Be the big cock of the north. Every time anyone asks you, do you think you're any good? You say, yes, I've got confidence in my own ability. Every player says, I've got confidence in my own ability in every interview they're ever asked. And I think he's the kind of player who will be exactly the same as that. So will he accept being on the bench? It's hard to say. If we weren't in the Champions League, I would say right off no. But because we have that European campaign at the top of the European table to come, and there's a good chance if he can stay fit, there's a good chance he might get some minutes there, where who knows, he might be absolutely sensational against European competition. You might be happy with that, but it's impossible to know.
Yeah, so I think that if he stays fit, he'll play a lot more this year, just given the sheer games and the shorter turnarounds and stuff like that. So if he can mentally accept that role that he's not going to be the big dog, I think he could be really valuable this year. Craig, I'll come to you. Allan's been very vocal in his hopes and dreams to represent France and play for the national team. So do you think, given he's not going to be a main player here, do you think he might move to try and get into that sort of, no, not get into that, but achieve that dream? Because I don't think he's going to get that playing here and playing a squad role.
I don't even think he would do if he stayed in the Premier League and say he does go to a mid-table team, somebody the likes of Brentford, Fulham, somewhere like that. Those teams aren't as high profile enough to warrant a place in that French national squad, because that squad is littered with high quality that are playing Champions League season in, season out, left, right, and centre. They are a bunch. They've got a squad, a 25-man squad of world-class players. Allan Saint Maximin isn't a world-class player. He sometimes had world-class appearances, but there's just no consistency there for him to make that squad. And I don't think if he drops down a tier of team in terms of quality, then it's going to be even harder for him to make that French squad.
Yeah, I think, look, I don't even think he'd be in the top. If you pick France's best 40 players, I don't think he'd probably be in it. Like,
He doesn't play enough, man. It just doesn't.
That's right. Yeah,
he's too unreliable. You can't pick Allan Saint Maximin the way he is now and has been for the last few seasons for a national team of France's expectation, if you like. You just can't do it. He's not fit enough. He's not sharp enough. He's not reliable enough. He takes up a squad place you could give to someone else who you definitely can't do those things with, or get those things from, rather. He's just not good enough. His body just cannot take it.
Yeah, I agree. So we know his sort of first 18 months, I guess, was great. Like you could mount the case that he probably kept us in the league the first 2 seasons he was at the club. He was the only shining light, probably, and the only thing that a lot of people had to look forward to when they went to the game was see if he was going to actually do something. Does what he did in that period have any relevance to today? So Craig, can we sort of get stuck in the past, or are we at the point now where we live more in the present to say, look, your last 12 months has been like awful, both in probably form, fitness, the whole lot? Like, how much does that first sort of 2 years count?
It has to count towards something, but I don't think it's an awful lot. I really, because back then we were a completely different team and a different ownership, different management. We didn't have a style of play. We didn't have a clue in what we're doing. It was literally a case of give it ASM, see what he can do. Hopefully we nick a goal, get a point, and maybe get all 3. Now we've got a strategy. We've got an ownership that actually cares about the club. The club's got a future. We've got a manager who knows what he's doing. He actually knows what tactics are, and those aren't the little white things that come in the box. I just genuinely, that's a good joke, that one. But
That's good.
I do think that in terms of where we were when he was our top dog, that does need some recognition, because I think it was Jack I mentioned, without ASM and Dubravka, we would be in the championship. Those two almost single-handedly kept us in the league, definitely. So he has to get some recognition there, but I think it will be a case of thanks for everything you've done in the past, good luck in your future endeavours, that type of thing. Every player comes and goes for the club, and he, unfortunately, probably will be one of them this summer.
Yeah, well, that ties into my last question, mate. Should we sell him? Yes or no, Craig?
Again, I'm genuine on the fence on this. I do think he will be sold, but would I personally sell him? No. Purely on the basis of the fact that if he can stay fit, there aren't many more exciting players in world football than ASM. And on the Champions League, like Lee said, could he thrive? He very well could. It could be the stage where his eyes light up and he is the player he once was for us. And hopefully that is the case.
Lee, I'll come to you, mate. Should we sell him?
We had the same conversation, the same question. Was it last season or season before even? I think it might have been last season. Yeah, it was last season actually. And my response was wait till January to see how he gets on and make a call then and get rid of Miggy in last summer. Just as well
you weren't alone. You weren't alone.
Yeah, but just as well nobody took any notice because obviously Miggy scored all those goals and ASM did absolutely nothing. I don't. There is potential there, and this is the problem with him. There is potential there. There is skill there, without a doubt. He's a highly skilled player. It's the reliability that is the problem. Now if we're going to keep him, we have to fix it. Otherwise, we're just taking up a spot that could be better served with someone else. So we have to be able to fix him. If we haven't been able to fix him now, I'm not sure what makes us think we might be able to fix him. In the next season or two, whatever it might be. He's here till 26 with his latest contract. Should we sell him? I think it may be a case of not should, but we have to for FFP reasons. If we want to bring in any number of people, don't forget we've also got to get our ratio of wages to turnover down to 90%. And I didn't know this until I looked at it, but it actually includes the coaching staff's wages in there as well, not just the players.
Oh, does it really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, includes the transfers and also includes the agent fees. So that's all got to be taken into that 90% that we have to meet for this season coming up. As I understand it, I could be wrong, but that's what I've read on the UEFA site. So it may be a case that we have to get the income in. It's all right amortizing all these incomings and spread them over 5 years, and that goes towards the pot that you spend initially. So we're not there. If it's 75 million, we've spent maybe half of it, but that doesn't get down the 95% down to 90 on its own. And again, I just keep coming back to it. I sound like a broken record. Can we rely on him? If you get rid of him, we'll have to replace him with someone, and that's going to be Harvey Barnes. But then do we have enough cover down the left? We've got Joe Linton, you've got Anderson, you've got whoever else. Gordon can do the left.
Gordon can play there as well, yeah.
You've got a bunch of people who can cover down the left if, let's say, for argument's sake, Harvey Barnes is our starter. I think probably all things considered, his time's come to go find pastures new. I actually hope he doesn't do it in the Premier League though, because if he turns out to be sensational and he's fit,
he'd be fucking fuming.
He got fit on the back of our dollar, and he starts banging him into this other team like Everton, for Christ's sake. Then I'll be absolutely spitting.
Yeah. So I've hopped up and down. No, I've jumped fences back and forth for months over this guy. Like, his talent is undeniable, and when he's on, he is probably one of the most unplayable players in the world, and no one can argue. No one can argue that at all. The issue is you see it 3 or 4 times a year.
Yep.
And I think where we are now, where we don't need guys who are 10 out of 10 for 3 games and then 3 or 4 out of 10 for 30 games. Like, we're not that team anymore. And no, we've got no other player like that who will give a performance like that. So with his inconsistencies with his injuries, I'm not sure if you can trust him or his body. And like Lee said, taking up a squad space. And even if we moved on and we didn't get Harvey Barnes, I still think we've got enough. And we showed last season that we did have enough to cover that position, whether it was Gordon sort of after January, which I think he'll be a lot better player next season than what he was for the 6 months. The Willock and Joel Linton thing seemed to work pretty well when they played out there. Anderson showed a little bit. I think that's his probably preferred positions out on the left, rather than he did play a bit in the midfield towards the end of the year through injuries and sort of unavailability and things like that. So I think we've got enough good players there to cover and not be a worse team. And if Barnes comes in, well, that's great. We've got even more, and maybe that means Joel Linton, like you said earlier, Lee, can focus more on that central role. Can pinch hit out on the left if we need to, but we've got that versatility, especially with Gordon as well, where we've got a lot of players who can play in sort of different positions. So
even Isaac. Even Isaac's been down a few times.
Yeah. We forgot about that. He's probably the most effective one. But if it was up to me, I'd pull the trigger and sell him. I just don't think he's reliable enough for where we want to go. And that's not saying he's a bad player, or he's been amazing for us. He's been incredible. And like I said earlier, he's probably kept us in the league the first couple of years he was here, given how shit we were and some of his performances. But whether it's the coach and he's actually had to play to a structure now and just a pat on the head and go out and do your best and everyone give him the ball, I don't know if that's part of it as well. But he's a good player, but I don't think he's a good player for us.
You kind of carry a position like that with a guy like that across 4 different competitions in this. We need everyone to be on it. We need everyone to be available.
Yeah, we need all hands on deck.
Yeah, and also I'm just thinking, like, how many other teams, even just the Premier League, have a player like him? Probably none, really, who can jink and skip and twist and turn. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm sure there's maybe 1 or 2, but by and large, they don't have players like that because why?
They're not trustworthy.
They're not reliable. And they can be found out really easy, as I've mentioned. Like it's not that difficult to figure out what he's going to do when you've seen it 1,000 times before.
Yeah. So we've got Craig
keeps
Lee. If we
I
have
am
to,
literally 51% keep him, 49% sell him.
Don't change your tune now, you pussy.
No,
you had your
I'm
chance.
still in favour of keeping him, but again, it's as borderline as you can possibly get, you know.
Yeah. So that's the reality we live in. We'll get 50% of people say keep him, and the other 50% say get rid of him. Let's cut our losses and get some money in and stuff like that. So if you're still with us, love to hear your thoughts in the comments. He's definitely, and if you don't agree with someone in the comments, you don't have to bloody railroad him out. Just politely disagree and put your case forward. We can all be friends here, and a difference of opinion is fine, but there's a right way and a wrong way to go about it. And Craig, your way is wrong. So that'll be it tonight, boys. I think. Appreciate your time. It's been one I've been sort of hanging out to do for a while, and given this Harvey Barnes talk, I thought tonight was a good time to pull the trigger and let it all out. This is our safe space, so we can say things that no one watches us, so we can say what we like, and no one will ever remember it. Isn't that right, Craig? No one remembers anything you say on this podcast.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll wrap it up there, boys. Lee, mate, it's good to have you back on.
Thanks, mate.
You've been MIA for a little bit, but it's good to have you back in the starting lineup. Craig, I hope you and your bong eye get better soon.
Oh, friggin' hope so. I've got to go into work tomorrow, and I've been off for the last few days. I'm going to get some funny looks, that's for sure. Someone's going to think I've come loose from a nuclear power plant or whatever. So nothing changes with people's opinions when they look at your work. just another day that ends in Y for Craig at work. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Yeah. Yeah, make sure if you're still with us, give us a like and a comment. Subscribe to the channel as well. We'll be back either over the weekend or early next week with another big show, and hopefully next week we've got a special guest lined up. So stay tuned for that. Thanks everyone for your time. We'll see you next time. Thanks, boys.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye, everyone.